um, but yeah, there's ways for this to go very wrong. There's ways for music to go very wrong, but normally it is symptomatic, not causal. And so
that's a great point.
It's if your kid is really, really, really wanting to listen to the worldly stuff, it's not the music that caused a problem. You have raised a kid who wants to drop their hand and not defend themselves. You've raised a kid who's attracted to something and they're being drawn that direction. And the fact that they're pursuing that music is not the root problem. It's the runny nose, not the virus. And the virus is going to be upstream.
Met a ghost of a king on the road when I first fell. Fire burning to my knees I fell. Met a ghost of a king on the road.
Do we start with an exhale?
Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Little heavy sigh.
Yeah.
Welcome to Heavy Sigh. Stories are soul food.
I was informed by a fan that SASF as an acronym is no longer funny either.
It was never meant to be funny.
No, that's what I thought. I was going to see if you thought it was funny because it was just. It was just the acronym.
It's the acronym, but we didn't do it because of. We didn't name the podcast for a funny acronym.
Perfect.
It's just SASF. That's what we are.
Right.
You can be amused or not as you want. I am drawn to awkward acronyms. That's for sure.
I think
no
that
question. And I think that people telling me that it's not funny is going to make it more enjoyable for me. It's like, I don't like hearing you say that. Will make me think, oh,
right.
Sass.
They're getting the levers for dealing with the podcast host. Tell us not to talk about what you want us to talk about.
I don't like your name. Oh. Well, watch me name it now.
Okay, here we go. So we have...
Welcome to SAS.
There you go. If that,
was it funny?
If that didn't get to that guy, I don't know what did.
This is SAS podcast number. We don't know.
Well,
and that's not a joke. I don't know. Now, Brian might. Brian checked.
I do, but we actually have some in the can, so I'm not going to say what number this is. So we've got one in the can. So they've been rearranging. We're putting the Tucker one out first.
I didn't approve that.
You don't actually get to.
I don't have approvals. Yeah,
you forgot to put that in.
We don't have a contract.
You forgot to put that in.
We don't know what we're doing. We have microphones, but no contract.
Right.
What are we talking about today, Brian?
Well, I think it's time to either talk about maybe music. Music is where I wanted to start with. So
it's boring.
I know it sounds boring, but I get enough questions about it, and I think people may not know that you've published a song. So I'm saying, yeah, you did. Grace Hurts Harder.
Right. Yeah.
But
that's different. That's totally different. It's not the music.
You wrote the lyrics to a song.
I wrote some of the lyrics, and it is true that in days in which I'm the most punched in the head by life and circumstances, I look forward to a life where I simply write country songs. But that's what I'll do eventually, but they will just be the lyrics, not the music.
See, that's why we push you into these questions, because we find out interesting little things like this.
I have a notebook full of country songs, but it's...
Come on, you got to share one. What's the title?
Oh, you ready?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that I should share this one.
You're going to kill everybody. Do you have a tamer one to share?
The song title is Double Wide Woman.
Double Wide Woman. Wow.
Yeah.
That's so full of character.
Yeah.
But you don't want to write the music. You just have the lyrics.
They just have the lyrics, yeah.
I would assume that your songs have a narrative arc in them as well as they go.
Yeah, they do.
So, because that one works on multiple levels, just right on the title.
Yep, Double Wide Woman. And it's a heartfelt plea from a man with a single wide life looking for a double wide woman.
That's great. That's really good.
It'd be a country song. It'd be a country hit, don't you know? There's a lot of them, actually.
Wow.
I think I've got like 20.
20. I'm still sitting here processing. Everybody's going to be hearing audible Brian processing to breaks.
Yeah, I've got, and so, but again, I'm not like music. No,
Well, you know what?
When Chris Stapleton eventually calls, I'll be like, I got you.
Right.
Because he's got the right voice for it.
Because you could actually cut down to a full album out of those 20 and have just the bangers.
Just have some pretty good ones. Summertime Sun, some other things.
That's awesome. See, I should have known that about you because your dad writes every single genre possible. So I should have assumed that you also are constantly churning. But that actually helps answer this question. We have a young mom who's a listener said did jazz professionally for a number of years before she became a Christian. And
congratulations.
Well, that's what she wants to ask because she's supposed to be congratulated because she was singing, the Fly Me to the Moon classic to her kid.
I meant on becoming a Christian, but
I thought you meant on jazz. Anyways, here's her question. She was singing Fly Me to the Moon to her 4-year-old.
Yes.
Right? You are all I long for, all I worship and adore. Kid says, is this about Jesus? And immediately the mom guilt hits of, well, no, this song is not actually about Jesus. And I think that's she wanted to know, does music work the same way that stories work? How can I sing a song like that to my 4-year-old without in some way messing up my priorities as a mom?
She can just add the word not.
You're not what I long for. You are not all. It just needs to be you are not all I worship and adore.
Yeah. There is a fine line between hyperbole, which is what that is hyperbolic, and blasphemy. If you literally meant that and only that, and you were stuck in literalism, then yeah, that would be blasphemous. But it's not actually literal. It's
right.
Poetic hyperbole, and that's completely fine.
Yeah.
So I would sing it to your toddler even more.
Yeah.
And
because your toddler should know.
Yeah.
You are number
But you can
one
also tell your
world.
toddler that I, of course, worship God. And one of the reasons why I'm really, really grateful to God is because he gave me you. And that's like one of the biggest blessings is that kid. And even showing that kid how even your affection for them points back toward God is helpful. It's great. So those moments when literal brains, like tiny literal brains, ask questions and you have the opportunity to kind of like hem and haw and backpedal and get worried, or you can just point them to God.
And what you did right there is establish the hierarchy that allows us to enjoy music.
Yeah.
Because if you took music and put it up at God's level, you have to get rid of it. But if you actually have life the way that God made it, we have him at the top and everything else is things that he's
there's
made.
Obviously, it's not like there's all hyperbole goes. Like I hate and would never listen to Take Me to Church.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that song.
Like never. Like
that is
where it's like I'm equating
song.
I'm equating fornication and immorality with worship, with going to church, and it's like, oh my gosh, no. No. That's a non-starter. So there's lines, and there's lines you don't want to cross. But Fly Me to the Moon, is that the one she was singing?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you're fine.
It's also a metaphor. It's also a metaphor, right? Because you're not actually flying your kid to the moon. Are you lying to your kid in this jazz song?
Yeah, but I would say sing it well. Let your kids be the beneficiaries of having a jazz singer of a mom. That'd be fantastic for a little kid. It's a great thing to marinate in, lullabies and great songs that their mom's belting. And take the opportunity to talk about the lyrics, talk about God, talk about your gratitude to God, right. And how you really do. You're not literal. This is not a literal thing. This is something that's an overexpression. Mm-hmm. Like this is an overexpression of your love. And if you're talking literally, then one of the reasons why you love God is because he gave you this kid.
Right.
So one of many.
And of course, C.S. Lewis runs through those 4 different kinds of love that we can work through, like need love.
Yep.
Gift love, appreciative love.
Yep.
I think when we squash everything down into if I like something, it's idolatrous.
If somebody were to say, man, cookies and cream is my favorite thing ever. Like, really, should their mom be insulted? Like, is this a renunciation of their love of their mother? No, it's not. This is the nature of hyperbole. Yeah. And we are not literalists. Being a literalist is dumb, and we don't do it.
Right. I like to do things on our podcast, like read Taylor Swift's lyrics
Oh, good.
because her album just dropped, which I'm sure.
And I
you're
would have
aware
just
of.
obliviously not cared, except for you ambushed me in my own podcast with T Swift.
You forgot to put that in the contract. I think it'll be flagged.
Yes.
No
Okay.
T Swift.
Bring it, Brian.
I think this is kind of transitioning to older children now, right? So
Okay.
folks who'd be tempted to listen to Taylor Swift and marinate when she's got songs like, let's just run this over literal hyperbole. What if I roll the stone away? They're going to crucify me anyway. What if the way you hold me is actually what's holy? Classic, wholesome Taylor Swift stuff, where she's leaning into,
so wholesome.
where she's just intentionally taking every religious symbol she can and flipping it to be about romantic
what
love.
if up was down?
Yeah,
But wait, what if down was up?
right.
Ooh.
And right there, you have the Tortured
way
Poets
is- which
Society
way
or
is
whatever
left?
it is. Yeah.
Which way is right?
I guess here's a basic question. How nervous do you need to be about your children listening to Taylor Swift like that? I think
I don't need to be nervous at all because they don't and they won't.
awesome.
I mean,
Obviously nervousness is not the response in any way, but
I'm also not nervous about them eating 50 pounds of cotton candy.
Mm.
It's like they won't.
right.
So, but if they were to, would I be nervous? I'd be a little horrified.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of cotton candy to weigh 50 pounds, by the way. It's a lot. So
Well, I would think there'd be a lot of vomiting.
it's like a whole, but the
That would be a
point,
bale,
the
a
point
bale of
is
cotton.
like, if you've done your job, then that this is not an issue,
Mm.
And
Right. And it would be a correction moment with if you find a child listening to music they shouldn't, that's a parenting
Yeah.
moment. Just like your child doing something they shouldn't.
yeah, but it should happen pretty young. And you need to let them have musical taste and have things they're learning to listen to and be having those conversations early so they grow up into it. Because you don't want to just have it be a light switch of you may now listen to music and what are you going to listen to? Well, all your friends are pushing, all sorts of stuff. And so you're going to kind of get sucked into that and you've got no discernment, no immune system of any kind.
Mhm.
And you're going to crash and burn.
Yeah.
So, it's like are you nervous, Brian? Are you nervous about your kids having M&Ms for breakfast?
It's a funny question.
Yeah.
When you put it like that.
they're like, no.
Yeah.
But what you mean you let them? Like, no. It's like, it's not a big scary thing. Like if my kid heard a Taylor Swift song, it's not going to break them.
Yeah.
If my kid
Right.
had snuck some M&Ms at breakfast, it's not going to ruin everything.
Well, I do think many
but
parents
it is actually like, obviously that road could be a road of total destruction and despair.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think many parents actually are nervous though, because the question, are you nervous about your kids hearing a bad word? They kind of
Yeah.
in abstract, that is something that gives them a little clench of like, uh-oh, I messed up.
yeah,
And of course they could have messed up depending on how young
Yeah.
and where they
Yep.
heard the bad word. But yeah, you've talked about this a lot. Your
immune
coach,
systems, strength,
right?
like build up.
So that Taylor, Taylor Swift's, I think my age.
If your
And she's
teenage
not grown out of
daughter
that.
is
Yeah.
a Swiftie, it is a problem.
Yeah.
And no, you shouldn't be nervous about it. You should address it. And you shouldn't address it via scolding. You should address it via assessing where you went wrong as a parent.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, I've seen parents try to do this by suddenly hyper digging down into every single lyric their kid is working to, and that one's
Yeah.
also entertaining because,
no,
like
all
you
the
said,
literalism and everything else.
song lyrics are really metaphorical often, and
Yep.
But yeah, okay, interesting.
But there's a lot of kids who shouldn't have Spotify. They
Mm.
just shouldn't. And that's because why would you trust the algorithm and trust the potential anonymity, the networking, the peer pressure that you have no access to and you can't perceive, and the algorithm of this giant corporation?
Right.
Why would you just do that? We have Apple. We actually have Apple Family, but it's, everybody's got shared playlists. Everybody's, we had Spotify for a little while and it was, didn't like it.
just because you were getting pushed and steered in a number of different
And
directions.
it's not like Apple doesn't try to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's more mass. I prefer it. You know, I've got a pretty significant library already on Apple, and so it's easy to kind of expand into Apple Music and have the kids be able to make playlists and so on. But everybody can see everybody's playlists. Everybody can mess with everybody's playlists, and it's great.
Right. Do you think?
But that kind of transparency and that kind of communal consumption of it, like the fact that we all consume music together is great, is healthy. And that my youngest can throw on her older sister's workout mix. You know, it's like when, you know, she's working out here and her sister's in Michigan, and
right.
You know, it's like, oh, hey, who added this to my playlist? And
your little sister.
Yeah. And it's pretty funny. So that I just prefer it that way. And as social as Spotify is designed to be, it's just weird. It's just weird, and I don't like it. And it rubs me the wrong way. So
what do you think about filtering music? Like say music with cusses. A skip. I mean, it
depends on the cuss, right?
Yeah.
So there would be songs that I would turn on, but my kids are my youngest is supposed to steer away. Like we steer away from all the E's, everything with an E.
Yeah.
If my older kids started incorporating those into their playlists heavily, we'd have a conversation about, hey, why are you doing this? Why is this worth this? You know, what's
right.
it?
Right.
What's the benefit, et cetera. My oldest is the most likely to have like weird Russian music, and
who knows what they're saying. Well, Rory probably
he does. Yeah, he does. But yeah, there's ways for this to go very wrong. There's ways for music to go very wrong, but normally it is symptomatic, not causal. And so
that's a great point.
It's if your kid is really, really, really wanting to listen to the worldly stuff, it's not the music that caused a problem. You have raised a kid who wants to drop their hand and not defend themselves. You've raised a kid who's attracted to something and they're being drawn that direction. And the fact that they're pursuing that music is not the root problem. It's the runny nose, not the virus. And the virus is going to be upstream. Yeah. So why are they so drawn to trying to be cool? Why are they wanting?
That's what it is. I was going to ask you, music seems like almost it's the thing that people choose as their identity, or especially it used to be, I think, before it kind of proliferated.
So you could take a 16-year-old girl or 17-year-old girl, and you could have her be really drawn into a certain type of literature, and she could become obsessed with the Brontes. Mm-hmm. And that would be just as destructive to her as her 17-year-old friend who's really into Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
And one of them is acceptable in an educational setting. And I read the Brontes and I love the Brontes and I'm really into the Brontes. I'm really, really into them.
Right.
They're amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I've jumped the shark over here and I'm reading these romance novels and I'm chasing a particular kind of scintillation and a particular kind of fantasy that hits me with a particular kind of dopamine. And it's this rhythm of, you know, love and romance and stress and usually two guys being into me and which way shall I go and hardship and suffering and like sort of like the tortured but beloved, downtrodden, you know, it's like all the weird dopamine hits that happen in that kind of storytelling. It can all be over there. And it all exists in all of Taylor Swift's boyfriend tracks over and over and over again. The same things over there.
Right.
So just because it's new and worldly does not mean anything.
It's unique.
Right? So if somebody's drawn there, they're being drawn to something new and worldly and cool. And they might be showing you a vulnerability to peer pressure and a desire to be cool. But they also might just be showing you a lack of emotional discipline and a hyper sentimentality that they like the wish fulfillment. They like the escapist fantasy of belting these boyfriend breakup lyrics.
Yeah. When
they've never had a boyfriend ever. But there's this, there's this fantasy there. Yeah. And so they're not vibing and connecting with the heartbreak and the trauma and everything else. They're actually pretending to be that girl. And they love to sing that and pretend like they've been, you know, they've been so deeply in love and rejected and thrown away, or more often they've thrown him away and they're so desired and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But that can be worldliness. It can be a susceptibility to peer pressure. It can also just be a susceptibility to their own emotional, shall we say, lust,
Mm-hmm.
like their own emotional lusts and desires.
Yeah, just become hormonal new.
Yeah, but the same, you can turn that off, and remember, it's symptomatic. You didn't fix anything.
Yeah,
like
so you need to be talking to your daughter about
you didn't
the
fix
desire,
it.
right?
You need to be training her up to be stronger, healthier, stronger in relationship to God, but stronger in relationship to her parents, and etc. You don't tell her to do those things. You actually just have to bolster those things. You can't do it informationally,
Gotcha.
purely.
Yeah.
So a dad who says, "Hey, babe, we're not listening to Taylor Swift anymore," has wiped his daughter's nose, and that's all. There's nothing about the virus that you've addressed. It's like you haven't. What he needs to do is build that relationship with his daughter. Like he needs to invest in that relationship and have a strong, healthy one, where he sees that she has the ability to check her emotions, but so does he. Has the ability to help her with that. Right. But the fact that you've wiped her nose and the manifestation was Taylor Swift is meaningless, because it could be Bronte and you probably will never notice, because you'll just be like, she's a real reader. We're so proud.
Sure.
Because
it's a classic.
Yeah. Because no one in the church complained that your daughter was bopping loudly to a Bronte audiobook, while carpooling some friends.
Heathcliff.
Yeah. And I'm beating up on Bronte, but I'm using Bronte as
these are all examples, people. Apply them yourselves.
Now they're examples for a reason, and it's not like it's evil of, to read a Bronte novel, but there's a kind of personality flaw that can go deep in there and mainline Bronte right into their emotions and want that roller coaster and want that ride.
Yeah.
They're there for the bipolar ride that is being had vicariously through all this, this horror and these wildly melodramatic situations. So the girl who's bopping loudly to Taylor Swift while driving some other girls in the church somewhere and gets tattled on, and if her dad's like, "Hey, don't do that," when other girls are in the car, like, what have you achieved? But no one goes back and addresses the other issue that is just as exposed by what kind of books you're reading.
Yeah.
How into Jane Austen are you? And is it in the correct way or is it in the wrong way? Because there's, it's easy. And it's like my grandfather refusing to tell me war stories. There was,
gotcha.
Where I was an age as a little boy where I wanted to hear about people dying and getting blown apart. And he was like, "No."
Right.
Nope.
He's like, "That's real."
Yeah. And I'm not gonna just scintillate you with this in your little boyhood when you're older.
I was gonna say, let's do College Boys next, because I think all of us went through the stage where the newest rap album was very cool or whatever. And we were like, until you listen to the lyrics, wow, that was amazing. And then you start to realize, oh, this is actually the performative masculinity that you're trying to.
Yeah. But same thing's true there. When guys are into it, the question is always just why.
Yeah.
Like, why? And for guys, it's frequently going to be laziness. They're into it because of a lazy reaction to social pressure. And it's not even like a full-on rolling over. It's just, apathy. It's like they just kind of got into it because it's there they go. But you can also have guys who are just as concerned about being cool and being up and
Sure.
being with it. But right now has way less to do with music and way more to do with, why aren't you on social media? Why aren't you on Insta? Why aren't you on Be Real?
Gotcha.
Why aren't you in these places?
So you're saying they're getting pressured to be connected and be part of what everyone else is listening
to attach particular levers to their psyches that other people can reach.
Wow.
So, put on this puppet string.
So
why don't you wear a puppet string? We all wear puppet strings. If you were cool, you'd wear a puppet string. and then we can.
That's very true.
Then we can steer you.
It almost continues into adulthood.
Yeah, it absolutely does. But then on the music side, if some guy is listening to some track he shouldn't be, diagnostically, it could be for any number of dumb reasons.
Sure.
It could be because he's doing vice tourism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's there because of the transgressive nature of the words and the naughtiness and everything else. So he's there just being naughty.
Yeah.
It could be there because he is off the rails and trying to be masculine. Yes, he wants to be in the tough world where these athletes that he admires are, and they listen to this music. So he's imitating role models that he shouldn't be imitating. And it could just be that he's really, really lazy.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like he just went on Spotify and just was lifting and turned this on and became habituated to particular types of music.
It does seem like parents have to be able to show their kids how to appreciate music and
how to appreciate anything.
Yeah. And then
it's not unique.
Right.
It's not a unique thing. How do you appreciate anything? How do you think through anything? Why do we do what we do when we do it? And it has to be thoughtful. So, why? Why are you watching this? Why are you reading this? Why are you listening to this? Having the mechanisms of answering those questions. And is it serving you? Is it serving your ends? And are your ends good and righteous? And is this aiding you in your pursuit of those ends or not? Yeah. It's not neutral. Like, is it helping you get there or not? And what's the risk reward? What's the return? What's the downside? And so it's not, music is not a separate thing. Music is not this separate thing about how do you do this? It's the same as everything else.
Right. How
and why and when and what.
Is it a particular cultural thing that we have right now that takes music and makes it your own little self-expression thing? Like, what is it about music that tends to be
much worse than that? I think it's everybody right now, all these little idiots everywhere have their own channel and they're in charge of programming for their channel. And they live their lives as if they're on TV and it's their soundtrack. So people are scoring themselves thinking that they're on screen, and then often placing themselves on screen and scoring themselves literally on screen.
Mm.
So,
and it is all doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's all just a massive waste of time.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think how to discuss and process music is the same exact conversation of how to discuss and process books, how to discuss and process shows, movies, everything you do.
That's okay. Connected to that. And again, I think this is going to be really bad on our culture here, a criticism of our culture, but how come music used to be the only way we consumed story, right? The epics, the narratives. It used to be, ballads.
Kind of.
Well, I'm just thinking go back to ballads, right? I think
I disagree.
I'm right. I think
You're
I'm
wrong.
Right.
You're wrong.
Okay.
Those are stories with soundtracks, Brian.
Story, that's a different podcast. Stories are soundtracks.
Yeah, stories with soundtracks.
Well,
there's words in those ballads, yeah?
Yeah.
And the words are what mean things, right?
Right.
And the words are the story. The words are the thing. The song is the soundtrack.
Sure, but what happened that we don't do that now? Or is our version of the ballad now, unfortunately, Taylor Swift? Have our heroes that we used to sing, say, Ballad of the White Horse King?
Yeah.
We used to be able to handle 20 or 30 stanzas of King Alfred.
How to Train Your Dragon is a ballad.
Okay. I'm more
I mean, it's a heroic story with a ton of really great music that carries it. And if you trigger the theme, if you start playing the theme of How to Train Your Dragon, it immediately and evocatively takes people back into that narrative and back into that hero's journey.
Okay.
Film is way more comparable.
So you're doing that thing where you hate distinctions on what genres things are. And I've never thought of movies as ballads before.
I'm not a Platonist.
Yeah, you really hate the Aristotle pleated pants approach to entertainment. I'm gonna try and catch up here. So you think we
Kung
still
Fu
have
Panda, also a ballad.
Dang. Okay. Shoot. But it's
Maverick, Top Gun Maverick, a ballad.
Wow. You're the director here, so I think I'm having to just agree with you.
You take some.
Okay, so our storytelling has transformed, but you think we didn't really lose it? We just are adding other things here.
Yeah, we've just added a lot to it.
Yeah.
The only thing we've lost is the percussion of the words themselves, and only then sometimes,
Right.
because we have this massive visual component. So we're not leaning on the iams and trochees and anapes and dactyls as much, except in dialogue. But we're not reciting long things with hooks in order to aid in the memorization and everything else. But we are scoring stuff, and scoring stuff matters a lot. And so if I played, I don't know, 5 seconds of the Home Alone score, everybody would be there. If I played 5 seconds of Indiana Jones, everybody's there. Jurassic Park, everybody's there. Star Wars, everybody's there, immediately transported to the story. And so we're not divorced from music.
So I was trying to draw a very wholesome line from ballads crashing into Taylor Swift and how bad we are. But you're saying ballads connect with film, and Taylor Swift is just a weird little, I don't know, pop music sort of.
I think Taylor Swift is like the most comparable to like big, complicated, sugary drinks at Starbucks. It's like it's a snack. It's a song that's being ingested.
Right. Because it's so short.
Yeah. And it's this little consumable, and it's meant to trigger certain reactions.
Yeah.
And people go to it and they seek it for certain fantasies and escapes.
It's almost like a Trump tweet. It's got,
you could talk about the destruction of the album. And I think the destruction of the album is real. The album used to be a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so the release of an album, it had a structure. The album itself had to have a shape. A really successful one's tried to.
Mm-hmm.
And then the single game and iTunes smashed it all the way back to singles. I still stubbornly buy albums, as I've said on this podcast
Probably why
before.
you guys like Apple or Apple Music, because you can reward
I have a
the
library.
artiste.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a library of purchases, and I'll, if I like something, I'll buy it. I find that Icelandic band that I really like, I buy their album.
The throat singing Russians or Mongolians.
I don't think we've bought that album.
That's free on YouTube.
Yeah. But so the Taylor Swift tracks, it is absolutely a drug. It's a little sugary, sweet, caffeinated beverage.
Wow. Okay.
That gets girls bouncing off the ceiling of their car. Just sort of as they're bombing along. It's something they can bop on their earbuds to make them think that they're living in some Netflix show. And see themselves with that track.
So it's the most processed, most concentrated form of what used to be food. It's sort of like the Twinkie, I guess.
Yeah.
And
it's been that way for a while. I mean, it's not fundamentally different than people are going nuts for the Beatles the first time.
Right.
It's like it's tracks that people really grab onto, and they grab onto like they grab onto hits of something. Mm-hmm. A hit of a particular drug. And so when you think about the audience that's all in on Taylor Swift and what they get out of it, what is the chemical reaction they're getting out of it? It really is a fantasy wish fulfillment. It really is, appealing to that aspect of the consumer base, and has created a ton of psychotic superfan loyalty.
Yeah.
Like that's
impressive on one level, I guess.
No, it actually really is. Taylor Swift is a genius and is extremely hard worker.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I can't patronize her, like in terms of her level of success, and
right.
I can insult her but not patronize her. She's achieved something that's pretty phenomenal in the entertainment world. It'll be short lived. It's like, but it's lasted way longer than I thought it ever would have.
Oh, totally.
In large part because of her genius. And I would say that it'll still be short lived. Despite that, it'll be short lived. But this will be a nostalgic wish fulfillment hit for female consumers for decades. Yeah. And on the global level, it'll still be short lived.
Yeah.
but it's quite an achievement.
What can she pivot to? Say she realizes how short lived.
When you have billions of dollars, you can pivot to most things.
Whatever.
I mean, she could start racing Musk to Mars. I mean, she could do what she wants to do.
Right.
So
fascinating.
But I would say I think this is really important. If your son is listening to, hard-edged stuff that he shouldn't be listening to, if your daughter's listening to Taylor Swift, do not see those things as like the root poison, the cause of something. They can be a magnifier. They can be an amplification of a pre-existing thing. They're feeding something in the kid. The question is, why? Why did we get here? How did we get to this place where you wanted to smoke a cigarette behind the gas station? It's like, why? Like the fact that you're smoking a cigarette behind the gas station is like, okay, we're going to address this, but I need to know why. I'd like what were the pressures?
Vodka in the water bottle at school is not, there's nothing about, why. Yeah.
If you dump it out and you're like, this is bad, and dump it out, you have not addressed the issue.
Right.
It's like you need to actually get to the why and get after what was the temptation? What were you giving into? What were the appetites that led you here that you started feeding? And for the guys, that's going to manifest in one way. And for the girls, it's going to manifest in another. For the guys, it'll be lust and ambition driven. And the version of that flips over on the girl side is frequently just giving into sentimentality and indulging particular emotional fantasies, which the guys do also, but they're just very different.
Yeah.
The fantasies are very different.
Hero day. Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah. The hero daydream versus the romantic daydream.
So anyway, that's all my evasion of talking about music.
We got it.
That's really
in which short episode.
In which Nate
It'll
refuses,
be a short one.
in which Nate refuses to talk about music. Really,
I think it's important that we got it out, though.
What else are we talking about, Brian? Is this a short one?
I think it should just be a short one. 35
minutes.
I mean,
and we could sit here and breathe for another 4 and call it 40 minutes.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's one. I'll add one detail. I kind of like the music that used to be. Music gets stripped of its meaning pretty easily, and music that used to be, big acts of rebellion and tear it all down, destructiveness, now get played in stadiums for football games.
Yep.
And moms pick up their little buddies who are wearing the right home team jerseys and jump and bounce around, to AC/DC and Guns N' Roses.
Right.
And so
it's funny that Rage Against the Machine has become a meme, like their apotheosis of this major punk rock is like,
and now they're like, aren't they adorable? They're this little thing, and it's funny. In my wedding, we had a Guns N' Roses recessional.
Oh, wow.
And it was fantastic, and played live by my talented brother-in-law, and it was great.
That's awesome.
But that's an example of something being declawed. It's like its teeth have been ripped out. Its claws
there's
have been pulled.
something inherent in the music that makes it bad.
No,
you can kind of listen to it.
Yeah, and that was great. It was I will remember that moment forever, in large part because of that musical marking.
Right.
Because your wedding day, as every guy knows, is pretty blurry.
Yeah.
It's pretty blurry. But that's a very concrete moment. But I love taking my kids to football games, and they start pumping some Metallica or AC/DC.
Right.
And it's like, what is this music now? This is music that we all jump around and eat hot dogs to now while watching guys play football. It is no longer smash the system, tear it all down, rebel, rebel, rebel. It's weirdly, it's like now being served at the drive-thru at McDonald's.
It is actually the go-to. They're like, I need a loud song. We'll do Enter Sandman, and they're trying to score their own reels. I'm sure.
They are scoring the moment, and that's exactly they're doing exactly what kids do, where they are trying to score this moment. And so I think it's Virginia Tech that uses Enter Sandman, and it's like a tradition, and they do that as the team's coming in, and it's
you kind of have to love that.
Oh I do love it, and it's super amped, and it's really fun to find footage of it and just like, yes, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
But everybody uses Seven Nation Army. Every single stadium will play Seven Nation Army. and score those moments, and everybody will start going.
Mhm.
And it's
One of my favorite memories was when our junior high basketball team was stinking it up, so we didn't get to choose our warm up music anymore, and they played CCR nonstop for the entire rest of the
I
season.
thought it was gonna be like Claire de Lune.
No, that would have maybe been more effective.
You know what? I should use that this next season. I'd be like, listen,
Right.
we've got a warm up track, but guess what I'm gonna play if you guys don't man up?
Yeah.
We're gonna be playing the
It's gonna be-
Nutcracker.
It's gonna be
That'd be amazing. This is a great idea. I've just had a coaching breakthrough, courtesy of Brian Cole. I think it's too bad that your coaches wussed out and just played CCR.
I know they should have really leaned in.
They should have leaned
We
in
didn't-
to the punitive emasculation.
Right.
Masculization.
You do know what this music is. It's the Nutcracker. So.
Oh, this is gonna be good.
I actually we aren't quite out of time because I did want to get nerdy and ask about classical music. Do you guys listen to much classical music?
Sure. I mean, what do you mean?
I mean, music that's not pop.
So if I have endurance sessions of writing,
Right.
which I have had like snacks recently, I have these little
Mhm.
parceled out portions of writing sections. So I have like 30-minute blocks in which I'm trying to get writing done, and that's much harder. If I'm like buckling up for days, I'm like, okay, I'm going day in, day out, which
Yeah.
is how I would normally have finished a novel. And I'm not like breadcrumbing it on the way somewhere. Then I would put on particular tracks, and they'd be the same artists and the same songs, and just looping. Because you just, the Pavlovian response of I'm associating writing and moving with certain songs. I can turn it on and it helps. Otherwise, right now, I would say I listen to music driving in my office,
Mhm.
and there'll be music on in the house when people are bopping around doing the dishes. It's like
Right.
that'll be going on. Otherwise, I don't have music on.
Right.
I just don't, because I'm trying to get work done.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say it obviously
classical
church.
music.
Church is when we do classical
But
music. and-
classical music is I don't think church is for classical music, by the way, but it shows up sometimes.
I was gonna say Advent and Holy Week are oftentimes where Messiah will come out, or a bunch of Easter. That's where you do feel like, hey, let's get rich, and also something that's serious, like the emotion.
Yeah.
A lot of pop music is not often serious in that same way.
Yeah. At the end of last year, I had a draft of a screenplay that I had to do, and I had a short time frame to do it in, and the Messiah was just on loop.
Mhm.
So just listening to the Messiah and bouncing back to specific tracks over and over and over again. But yes, classical music is around.
Right.
It is not listened to or consumed as entertainment often.
Sure. Okay.
It's not what gets thrown on when people are doing the dishes. It's not what I'm listening to when I'm driving to work. But one of the coolest things I talked about on the podcast, one of the coolest things ever was getting to see Handel's Messiah live and in New York.
Right.
And
The
I love Vivaldi a lot. I love Mozart.
when we were singing the Chichester Psalms at NSA, Leonard Bernstein, and those are things. I don't know. It does feel like you can enjoy music on all these different levels, and adding those and helping your kids understand them all is just what we do with any other genre.
Yep, it's great. And it's also important to remember that a lot of those classical musicians were libertines, and they were rebels, and they were the
Now they are so hoity-toity. They're getting used as punishment at Nate's future basketball game.
Yeah, they were cutting edge.
Right.
They were cutting edge. They were so now,
Right.
and not anymore.
They were so very homosexual, and we've all forgotten. We've all forgotten.
Yeah, we've left all that behind. I don't know. I think the single biggest takeaway for any parent on anything, whether it's TV, movies, music, is don't think that that's the problem. Just don't think that this is the problem. Think it's the manifestation of something. It came from somewhere, and that's what you got to try to figure out.
Yeah. I mean, so much parenting is that. Your kid threw the fit.
I also say that this is people should know this by now that there's not evil in the thing itself. Like it's not like a goo that just got into their soul and ruined them. But
except Doja Cat. Doja Cat.
But there's people who think that hip hop is that way. No, listen to that hippity hop, and it's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
If they're listening to particular kinds of misogynistic, filthy stuff, it's like, yeah, no, that's the problem. The problem is what it's catechizing and what it's pushing you towards. What is it affirming in your own fantasies? Like all those things, that's the problem. But the bounce, the rhythm, like, no.
Being better at wordplay than actually than the other artists.
There's actually potential in the hip hop genre to do long form like poetry.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist in the other stuff now. And it's unfortunate that it's mostly not utilized. Yeah. But there are people out there doing it. You know,
I think we may even have mentioned on the podcast. Didn't you guys have a friend who was a reporter who wrote like an earthquake episode, like a description, a broadcast of an earthquake in Italy, and wrote it in Anglo-Saxon poetry, and delivered it and won an award, but nobody knew. Yeah, like that's the example of what could be great about rap.
He had a very short window to cover this story, this really horrible tragedy of an earthquake. I think it was in Italy, and had destroyed this town, and with such a small window of time to do it, he did it in Anglo-Saxon.
Yeah,
poetic structure,
4 beats per line, a hemistich in the middle, and alliteration,
and it affected the audience really, really powerfully. Like it is that concentrated power, and so fit in that word space. Now, if you're doing that kind of thing where a lot of the percussion and the rhythm is in the words themselves, then it's I think hip hop has a ton of potential there. When they overpower it, when it's overpowered with too much beat, too much production, then it loses a little bit.
And just the stupidity of some of the latest stuff that I've heard. Some of it feels like classic rap.
Yeah, but at the same time, but the point is, it's not like it's like a container. It's a form. It's a movement.
Sure.
It's not of itself bad. Yeah. And there's too many people who will tell Johnny, you may not listen to any of that hippity hop, and it's just dumb.
Rather be like, Johnny, this album is actually kind of worth it.
Yeah. It's like Coney Island, The National and Taylor Swift is a great track. It's like just.
You heard it here, folks. It's a good song.
Yeah. It's a fun song. I like that one.
The National's kind of, probably the most masculine sounding pop band out there.
But the deep baritone's really fun. But basically, don't get stuck on forms. Don't get stuck on like little boxes you can tick that make a thing bad. That was rock and roll, so it's bad. That was hip hop, so it was bad. It's like, no, not necessarily. Like it's doing a thing, and it's not evil in and of itself. What is it doing for your kid? What is it doing for you? Why are you there? What are you consuming it for? Hot dogs are not evil in and of themselves. Hot dogs at 3 a.m. every night are a problem.
Sure.
It's like but this is the way it is with everything. There's stuff that's fine in and of itself in context and when consumed with the authority and wisdom of somebody who's making a decision that I need sustenance, I need a hot dog here, as opposed to becoming hooked on something or using it and abusing it in weird ways.
You think the mindless drifting is where you really get into trouble?
People can drift into trouble almost anywhere, and we can habituate stupidity almost anywhere. And then mom can come in and think that it's the superficial things about it that are the problem. So therefore, no more hot dogs ever. Hot dogs are bad. It's like,
There's nothing like they're first getting married and then also having a kid to all of a sudden all the music choices you're like, whoa, what was I listening to?
Yeah, it's like,
you're right. I don't think I want that one.
I'm not sure that was why was I doing that? What was that for? I'm not sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully this has been helpful because I don't think we answered anything. We just said,
no, we did. We said,
be wise.
Jazz.
Sing more jazz to your kids. Done. Perfect. This has been SAS.
Imagine the well-read man. Do you see a machine dressed in tweed, gorging on information? This book is not about becoming that kind of reader. The well-read man wakes up and consults with Moses on his way to work.
And God spake all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, which hath brought thee out of the land.
He sips his coffee and ponders the wisdom of Hannibal's elephants crossing the Alps. He turns furrow-browed philosophers upside down and takes their lunch money. He changes his oil and deliberates with Peter Drucker about effective management practices. He regales his wife with the tale of Monet's water lilies in the gardens at Giverny. He sings with Sandra Boynton as his toddler's eyes grow heavy. This book is about becoming that man. Be as human as you can be. Learn how to read a book.